This is Nate Richardson, and this is a presentation on Doctrines and Visions of the Future, Themes in Latter-day Saint Future Prophecy, Estimated Sequence of the Next 7 Years. There's a book this is based on called Doctrines and Visions of the Future, Analyzing Themes from Prophetic Teachings of the Latter-day Saints. You can get this book that I put together. It's a textbook, really. Go to richardsonstudies.com for the ebook or the paperback. So here's a little bit what we're going to talk about in this presentation. This is what I would call the cleansing and refuge phase of future prophecy. World War III, then economic turmoil where the dollar collapses and the stock markets collapse. The famine, 7-year famine. The Civil War in America again, 5-month-long Civil War after lots of climate calamities. This is within a year of the call of the places to refuge. Plagues begin. There's 3 major plagues, third of which is Ebola. You don't want to mess with that. U.S. president dying in office. Missionaries called home. During the plague and the war, there's refuge in the Rocky Mountain corridor. 3 plagues happen within a space of a year. Ebola is the last and the worst, brought by foreign invaders. America is invaded. Calamities happen back to back. God preaching his sermons of earthquake and tsunami and drought. The wicked New World Order ruler, call him the Antichrist, call him what you will, comes in and persecutes the saints, overcomes the saints, institutes the mark of the beast, FEMA camps, martial law, persecuting the Christians, apostasy among the Latter-day Saints, saints driven into the wilderness. The saints are called by church leaders to places of refuge. And when the invasion happens, the U.S. is nuked, hit with Ebola, and invaded by China and Russia. Eventually, there's a big Utah earthquake which sinks part of California. Don't be on the Wasatch Front when this happens. Refugees who survive the quake will go to Cache Valley or Sanpete County and other places. So, pretty crazy stuff, right? Before I jump into the details and tell you about the different visionaries that all this stuff is from, let's go over a couple little things. So, the book, it has a whole bunch of stuff on doctrines. The first whole half of it is on the doctrines, okay? And then the other half is on the visions. If you're like one of those people that, I don't like visions, well, at least get it for the doctrine part, okay? Now, the visions part, it'll talk about sequences, themes in the visions, takes all these visions the Latter-day Saints have been having, even some Protestant visions, and it compiles themes. Oh, these 7 people saw this happen. These 7 people saw this happen. Something you might want to pay attention to. Now, some people think the visions are just crazy, and there are some crazy people who have dealt with the visions. Okay? Some people think the visions are nonsense, not worth your time. Some people think the visions should be strictly personal. But I think the visions can be used with guidelines. Now, of course, these guidelines are not too specific. When it comes to this, they're more guidelines than actual rules. So avoid specific dates, and remember, we don't know for sure, but we're going to give it our best shot. Also, don't get into the crazy stuff, the energy healing, the pendulums, all this stuff that makes people crazy. And don't use the material from the known crazies. This book doesn't use that material, neither does this presentation. And I encourage folks to stay in or join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and submit to counsel. Next, remember the scriptures promote visions. Joel chapter 2, your old men will dream dreams, young men see visions, handmaidens, servants, pour out my spirit. D&C 110, D&C 137, the heavens were open, the veil was taken from our minds. God shows people this stuff all the time. Joseph Smith says, you know what, we do know some approximation, or at least we will. He says, when it comes to not knowing the day or the hour, he says, this was not for, let's see. Did Christ, I'll just quote it, did Christ speak of this general principle throughout all generations? Oh no, he spoke with the present tense. No man that was then living on the footstool of God knew the day or the hour. But he did not say that there would no man throughout all generations that should know the day or the hour. That would be contradicting Amos 3:7. So next, McConkie agrees with this. He says, we're not going to know the day or the hour, but the generation, yes. Those who can read the signs of the times will know this stuff. This was quoted in the D&C student manual. There's some statements of the time being near from a couple prophets. Nelson in 2020 says, we're building up to the climax when the Savior's coming becomes a reality. Eyring in 2020 said, you're the woman who have nurtured, who will be, you and the women you've nurtured will be at the heart of the creating of that society. The people who will join in the glorious association with the Savior. You'll be an essential force in gathering of Israel and in creating a Zion people who will dwell in peace in the New Jerusalem. Elder Rasband in 2020 said, this is all conference talks, We live in that time prophesied. We are the people charged with ushering in the second coming of Jesus Christ. We are to gather God's children, those who will hear and embrace this truth, covenants, and promises of the everlasting gospel. And in 2022, Nelson said, in coming days we'll see the greatest manifestations of the Savior's power that the world has ever seen. Between now and the time he returns, with power and great glory, he will bestow countless blessings, privileges, and miracles upon the faithful. So as we get into this, there will be some scary stuff. But also remember the good stuff. Always God will be with his people. And the worst of the worst is not for God's people. So, modern prophets also support visions. Joseph Smith said, we believe we have a right to revelations, visions, and dreams from God, our Heavenly Father, and light and intelligence through the gift of the Holy Ghost in the name of Jesus Christ on all subjects pertaining to our spiritual welfare, if it so be that we keep his commandments and ourselves worthy. Harold B. Lee said, some of us, there's one more way by which revelations come, and that is by dreams. Oh, I'm not telling you that every dream you have is a direct revelation from the Lord, but I fear that in this age of sophistication, there are those who are prone to rule out all dreams as of no purpose and of no moment. Yet, although the scriptures, all through the scriptures, there are recorded incidents where the Lord by dreams has directed his people. And then I'll summarize Orson Pratt. He says, if you have the spirit of prophecy, if you've not gone to sleep, you will be able to figure out a sequence. You will not be in darkness. You'll have a knowledge of the signs of the times. You'll be able to say coming events and can say such and such event will take place, and after that another, and then this trumpet, and then this certain things will take place. Okay, he'll have his eye fixed on the signs of the times, and that day will not overtake him unawares. Okay, so then let's take a look at some sequence things. Okay, first, Joseph Smith gave us three really important pillars. This he related to several statements to Theodore Turley. We get this. Okay, first, the dollar devaluation. They announced, hey, the dollar is going to be devalued. Then this is going to trigger a civil war. People get upset when you tell them the dollar is not worth anything. Then foreign nations invade us. Okay, so those are the three pillars of sequence that we can have from Joseph Smith there. So based on other study of other teachings, we can tell these things happen before the deliverance of Adam on Diamond. Okay, so an overview. Okay, we read this at the beginning. I won't read it again. Let's skip the overview. Let's jump in. I won't have time in this presentation to go on the redemption of America. That's where you get the wicked rulers done, the New Jerusalem, Adam on Diamond, vials and trumpets, Armageddon, second coming. All that's pretty basic core stuff that just the teachings of the prophets have said. So in this presentation, we'll focus on just this first half of the sequence, which is really the crazy part leading up to the end, okay? This is where we get a lot of details from visionaries. First, let's talk about World War III. An anonymous visionary said there will be a time when there's war in the Middle East, it breaks out and bleeds over into the Pacific Ocean to draw America into a confrontation. David Warwick firesides say that this war will be short, like 3 to 5 months, and there will be a large buildup of armies and many people will die. The Cardston Prophecy and Bishop Coyle and David Warwick all talk about this war happening in the Pacific Ocean. Warwick says it involves China, North Korea, and Russia, who watches from afar, then invades Alaska. The Cardston Prophecy says it begins in the Pacific Ocean, and that followers of Muhammad, Buddha, and Christianity are involved. She also mentions that it happens before the saints go to places of refuge. This helps us place this war in the sequence of things. It's before we go to refuge. North Korea. Okay, David Warwick talks about how North Korea triggers World War III with some violations smaller than previous ones. The U.S. empties 6 military bases on the west coast Pacific Ocean to go after North Korea. David Warwick also sees that communications are cut off. Our military is attacked at sea by China. So as you can see, we're going to the next topic now, which is missionaries called home as things get bad. I'm trying to draw in various themes, various things that the visionaries have taught. Okay, so let me see if we're still good here. We're still good. So, DNC 45, the Gentile time is over, then the Lord preaches his own sermons. He says, come home, missionaries, I'm going to preach my own sermons now. And I think that when the dollar collapse happens, that probably might be a time to bring the missionaries home, because they're not going without person script. They're not knocking on doors to ask for food and lodging. So if they don't have the money, then they're not going to be able to do what they're doing. Also, Anonymous David sees that, okay, this is a visionary known to the authors of this book, myself and my partner, but we, they want to be anonymous, so they're staying anonymous. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, Renee Martin and myself put together this book. So Anonymous David, he sees that the missionaries come home just before the call to places of refuge. Something we'll talk about more and more is there's a lot of visionaries who have seen that we'll be called to places of refuge. The missionaries will be called home and Missouri will be swept clean. Heber C. Kimball talks about this, and I'm going to prove to you that those are valid prophecies here in a couple slides. Visions of Glory talks about how a year after the big earthquake, the missionaries are sent back out. Okay, I know Visions of Glory is a controversial one, but it doesn't have any pendulums. It doesn't have any crazy stuff. It's just that a couple crazies picked up on it. So we're just going to treat it as one of the many visions that we're going to draw themes from. Okay, Brigham Young says whole cities, etc., will be destroyed after the missionaries are called home. Okay, and when I'm doing a lot of these quotes, I'm not going to say the whole quote. I'm just going to summarize. This is going to be an overview. So Dwayne Crowther wrote a book called Prophecy Key to the Future. It's a Latter-day Saint bestseller, and it quotes all these prophets, and I refer to those. I put the page number. You can go to his book and find those. So that's all in my book, and it's all. So we're just going to jump through it, and I won't keep saying go to this page. I'm just going to say the summary of who said what. Okay, finishing up with the missionaries. D&C 88 says, times of the Gentiles, then destruction, then a voice calls us out to meet the bridegroom. D&C 133 says, elders gather Gentiles, then Jews, then a call to go meet the bridegroom, then a call for the Gentiles to flee to Zion. Okay, next is economic collapse. Let's dial in on the economic collapse. Heber C. Kimball says, speculation and extravagance among the saints lead to financial bondage, and persecution comes next. Dollar devaluation is announced and the stock market collapses. Pensions and entitlements are unable to be paid, and this makes social strife and the start of a civil war. Thomas David sees all this. When the economy collapses, basic order will fail, including food supply chains. Tons of people have seen this. Gail Smith, Visions of Glory, Anonymous David, Bishop Coyle, Patriarch Evans, and just about every visionary. When the economy collapses, basic order fails, including food supply chains. This kicks in the big famine that all the prophets have been talking about. Money becomes worthless and there's no gas, Alma Erickson sees. Also, George Albert Smith, yes, the prophet, sees Great Depression will look like a picnic compared to the depression coming up. Bishop Coyle has shown that a rebellion, Bishop Coyle, he's another one of these just church members that sees tons of visions. And back in his day, he was known, he could call the shot on just about everything, and he was known for calling it right. So he's shown that a Republican administration would make great efforts to save the economy. That sounds familiar. He said prices would go higher and higher, and all at once something happened one night that the props would be kicked out from under everything, and down would come everything. This is a condition of rising prices and would be brought about by strikes. When the props give way, there will be suddenly an overnight price and wage crash or deflation that seems to occur at the same time as the death of a Republican president. Going on to my next page on economic collapse. Still good here. The locusts consume the Midwest, sees Anonymous David, and note there's no seagulls to save us this time because we are wicked. FEMA takes stored food from people who aren't in protected places. Several visions indicate this. Brigham Young says gold and silver will be good for only 2 years after the collapse and then only food. The time will come that gold will hold no comparison in value to a bushel of wheat. Bishop Coyle says this crash would cause every bank in the country to fail. Gold becomes very powerful as a medium of exchange. He said in Utah we'll return to gold and silver coinage, and our economy will hold up about 2 years longer than the rest of the nation. Heber C. Kimball says in the choice of a bag of gold and a cat, a person would choose the cat because you can eat the cat. Heber C. Kimball says, trade in your fine silks and fine things for grain and other needs. You will have to depend on your own resources. The curtain will be dropped between us and the rest of the USA. When that comes, you'll wish you had made your own clothing earlier. God requires that we go into home manufacturing. Now let's talk about the famine. The famine lasts 7 years. Coyle and others see this. It also parallels with the Book of Genesis 7-year famine and the Book of Mormon 7-year famine. And it increases in severity as it goes on. Brigham Young tells us that we'll have no famine among us if we do right. So good luck with that. You'll need food storage and gardens during the economic collapse, the Civil War, the famine, etc. So get on top of that. In the ancient famine, there was deliverance from Joseph in Egypt. In the modern famine, there may be some relief in the Rocky Mountain Corridor, Utah, Idaho, Arizona, where the latter-day Joseph established a kingdom of saints and instructed them to store food. Okay, obviously Brigham Young carried it out. Okay, Brigham Young brings us here. But it was the vision of Joseph, and we are the people, the latter-day Joseph. The Joseph in Egypt, and now we're the Joseph of the latter days. The whole Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Coyle pointed out that we should secure our wheat from the first and second years because in the third year it won't be fit to eat and it'll be poor quality. In the fourth year there'll be no grain available and you can't buy it at all with any price. Okay, he says store up your grain in those early years because It's going to get bad. Um, in the 7th year, okay, let me read some of this because it's important. Let's see. Basically, in the years 5 and 6, there will be saints dying from famine, and something is keeping the crops from coming to full fruition. In the 7th year, when the Savior returns, everything is normal again. Coil goes on. Let's see here. Basically, the first year you get a 75% crop, second year 50% crop, third year 25% crop, fourth year no crops at all. Okay, going on. So here's a few of my favorite quotes on getting food storage. Spencer Kimball says, there will come a time when there isn't a store. President Benson says, the revolution to produce and store food may be as essential to our temporal welfare as boarding the ark was in the days of Noah. President Nelson says, for decades, the Lord's prophets have urged us to store food, water, and financial reserves for a time of need. I urge you to take steps to be temporally prepared. Remember he talked about Moroni? He said that guy was always preparing spiritually and temporally. We can't just do the one. We got to do them both. Okay, Heber C. Kimball says, hard times are coming by and by, and there's going to be an awful famine, and if we do right, we'll take a course to lay up our surplus grain. Yeah. Oh, this is a good one. Heber C. Kimball. Thousands and millions in the United States and the old countries will come to us and render us all the rich things that earth affords in exchange for food. So don't just be prepared to feed your family. Be prepared for millions of refugees coming here to the West. Okay? Lorenzo Snow also teaches this, that when the nation is disrupted by civil strife, thousands will flock here and we'll have to feed them. Remember, you've got the economy collapses, people get angry and they fight each other, and then there's no food, and then people flock to the West. Okay, we're not going to the East yet, and not everybody's going to go to the East even when we do. We'll talk about that. Okay, next let's talk about the Civil War. Civil War in America again. The next Civil War begins in Chicago, according to Joseph Smith and anonymous dreamer David. And we've got all these accounts in the book. The Civil War begins in August of some year, according to anonymous dreamer David. The Civil War is about 3 months long. Okay, again, anonymous dreamer David. There will be a gathering into the Rocky Mountain West when the Civil War and the New World Order beast system is on. Millions of non-members will be fleeing out here to be protected, and we'll have to help them. And many of them will join the church. So stockpile up some Book of Mormons because we're going to be preaching big time. Brigham Young says the only in the Rocky Mountain corridor won't be at war, and there will be good people of all creeds flocking to the Rocky Mountain corridor to avoid war. 1 in 3 plagues occurs. The first plague occurs during the Civil War, says anonymous David. He also says the Civil War ends when Texas nukes a northeastern state where the rebellion is headquartered. Joseph Smith says the independent American Party will be created from the Republican and Democratic parties. The U.S. will spend its strength warring abroad. Others will want to divide it. The USA will stand against being divided, swearing to sustain the United States on the blood of their fathers. Half the U.S. Army will die in the conflict against the foreign nations who want to split up the U.S. Then the mountain boys of God will rush in to save it from union. Americans will be thankful and will want from then on only to receive men who can talk with God. Okay. Orson Pratt says in 1868, many hundreds of thousands will be destroyed in civil wars in the USA. Orson Pratt says, okay, and remember, that's after the first Civil War he said this, okay? So don't think this is about the first Civil War. Lots of prophecies. Everybody's like to say, oh, that's already fulfilled, that's already fulfilled. But I'm sorry, it's not going to be so cozy and easy as all that. Orson Pratt says, farming will be neglected as people flee from city to city in the upcoming Civil War. Joseph Smith says, the Supreme U.S. government will cease to exist. People will run from place to place, and families will turn on each other. Now I ask you, did the U.S. government, Supreme Federal Government, cease to exist? Well, there was split up, but no, we still have the federal government. So no, this has not happened yet. Okay? So I'll write this here. AKA, this hasn't happened yet. Okay, next slide. Okay, one more slide on the Civil War here. Brigham Young says strife and opposition within communities is the knife that will cut down the USA. Orson Pratt says eventually the fall of the USA and Europe, and then all business will cease from the chaos. Joseph Smith says, make haste. When the wars come, we'll need to flee to Zion. Gentiles will flow to us in a constant stream then, and our doors will be constantly open to them. And based on the context of all this, I think when he's talking about Zion in this case, we're not talking eastern Missouri type area. We're still in the west. Brigham Young says the battles will be even Christians against Christians. Anyone who doesn't want to fight will have to come to Zion to escape the fighting. Again, this Rocky Mountain corridor, this is where we'll be safe. The war will not be going on here. Oops. Okay. Orson Pratt says the missionaries will be sent out to all the world declaring there is peace in the heart of the USA, where there is peace and refuge from major destructions. Heber Kimball says millions will come not with hand carts, but only with bundles and their children on their backs. Joseph Smith says England will and some in France will be neutral until the USA gets so bad that they'll try to step in to stop the bloodshed. They'll see it will seem they rule the USA. The USA will have many claiming government power till it has none at all. In the Rocky Mountains there will be peace because of the cordon band of the white horse, as in the church, and the red horse, as in the Lamanites. Okay? Peace in the Rocky Mountains. Heber C. Kimball says they'll come with bundles and children on their backs. Okay? Heber C. Kimball says there's risk of famine among the saints because tons of people will be fleeing here. So you're going to need some extra food for them. Okay? That's a duplicate right there. Next page. Okay, now we're going to talk about refuge in the Rocky Mountains. Here I have a few full quotes. Like I said, I've been summarizing quotes, but these are a couple full ones. Quote, Brigham Young, an inland empire will be established in these valleys of the mountains, which will be a place of refuge for millions of people to gather to when the great day of the judgment of God is upon the earth, and the righteous will come here for safety. Our people will go east, west, north, and south, but the day will come when they will be glad to come back. We will be shut out from the rest of the world. Close quote. Joseph Smith, quote, a terrible revolution will take place in the land of America, such as has never been seen before, for the land will be literally left without a supreme government, and every species of wickedness will run rampant. Father will be against son, son against father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother. The most terrible scene of murder and bloodshed and rapine ever been looked upon will take place. Here we go. Peace will be taken from the earth, and there will be no peace only in the Rocky Mountains. This will cause many hundreds and thousands of the honest in heart to gather there, not because they would be saints, but for safety, and because they would not take up the sword against their neighbor. Close quote. Next, let's consider that there will be more reasons to go to the Rocky Mountain corridor later, but basically I'll tell you right now, if you don't want to be destroyed, you want to be here, and there will be chances to come here. You've got the foreign invasion coming, the Ebola plague, and the return to the center, Zion, Missouri. This is after that area's been wiped clean, after the saints have been tried. Okay, so ask yourself, is it totally righteous over there in Missouri right now? Is that all cleaned up? And ask yourself, are the saints refined and tried, and are we all ready for this stuff? Don't think so. Don't think so. Remember, not everyone needs to go to Missouri, but many righteous will stay in the West. Brigham Young said, and this is another full quote here for you, Journal Discourses. Are we going back to Jackson County? Yes. When? As soon as the way opens up. Are we all going? Oh no, of course not. The country is not large enough to hold our present numbers. When we do return there, will there be any less remaining in these mountains than we number today? No. There may be 100 then for every single one that is here now. It is folly in men to suppose that we are going to break up these our hard-earned homes to make others a new country. Close quote. Next topic is days of destruction, plagues, and climate calamities begin in America. D&C 88 says fear will come upon all when the calamities come. After the Civil War, there are 3 months of climate calamities, not the big Utah earthquake, that's later. At some point after these calamities comes the call from church leaders to go to places of refuge. It's likely all within a 12-month period, that time frame according to anonymous David. The U.S. president dies in office somewhere after the Civil War and subsequent destructions and plagues. Lots going on here. This is not the last American president. Okay, Daniel, Ezra, John the Revelator, David Warwick, and Coyle all talk about this. Coyle saw them look up and down the country, everywhere to find a man to take his place, and they would not be able to find one. The nation wandered in chaos. Anonymous David says the first plague is a white blister plague. Then plague number 2 is interesting. It's a plague of fear. Okay, don't be afraid. If you do, then you get to deal with this plague. So it happens soon after the first plague, and everyone around them is dying, and they don't know why. And it's a spiritual plague causing them to die from whatever they get sick from. If you don't ask to be healed, you succumb to it. You've got to have the faith to be healed. This is according to Suzanne Freeman's book, Through the Window of Life, and personal conversation with anonymous dreamer David. Again, anonymous, but we know who he is. Later, the third and biggest plague, Ebola, will come. We'll talk about that in a second. All the 3 plagues occur within a year time, about 3 months apart. according to Anonymous David, Suzanne Freeman, John Taylor, and Dreams of Plagues. It appears that once there is the first plague, we are called to places of refuge within 12 months. Again, Anonymous Dreamer David describes each of the 3 plagues being 3 months apart. And the last one is within weeks of after the call to places of refuge. So if you listen to this call to places of refuge when it comes, this opportunity to go somewhere that's safe, you should go, because soon thereafter you might say, oh, this is fine. We got through a lot of hard stuff and we'll get through more hard stuff and we're good. But you don't know that the big one's coming around the corner. So if you get to go, please go. Okay, after the Civil War, there are 3 months of severe climate calamities. The saints are called to places of refuge in the wilderness. Then is the foreign invasion and the Ebola third plague outbreak. Then is the Utah earthquake, according to Visions of Glory. Next, earthquakes hit hard during these 3 months of destruction prior to the call to places of refuge. The West Coast does not do well at all, and New York gets 8 earthquakes. Boston becomes an inland sea, and half of Florida falls off. This fulfills D&C 45 that Lord will preach his own sermons of tsunamis and earthquakes after he calls the rejected missionaries home. Then later, more fires and earthquakes will happen in other states, and Utah will get the big earthquake after the righteous leave on the call to places of refuge. The New World Order offers relief from and safety from the climate calamities. Those who aren't prepared go to FEMA camps. As part of the New World Order, the UN will try to take food from the hoarders, according to Anonymous David and Gail Smith. Foreign countries see America is weak from these calamities and will soon invade, first under the pretext of helping us, then they'll take over, or at least try. Utah does well during these times of calamity, and the coasts do not. Many come to the Midwest for refuge, but later the big Utah earthquake comes. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about New World Order, persecution, apostasy, and saints driven into the wilderness. Joseph Smith says the whole U.S. government will become one big mob. Ezra Taft Benson says unless we make communism treason, the nation will be destroyed. Ezra Taft Benson says the worldwide secret conspiracy that has risen in our day to fulfill these prophecies is easily identified. Remember, the Book of Mormon says this is going to happen. Moses Thatcher, apostle, says a secret band will sap the life of this nation and it will fall. A wicked ruler comes to power and is a short space or short feather or dies within days. Revelation 12, 2 Ezra 11, Daniel 11. The wicked ruler, call him the Antichrist, call him what you will, overcomes the saints, aka bans them from the public square, drives them into the wilderness for about 3.5 years. See Daniel 7:21 and footnote 7a and Revelation 12 and Daniel 11:33. More detailed references are in the presentation, which I'll put up on the website. And but notice here, driven in the wilderness. What does that mean? Well, maybe it's we literally have to go into the wilderness. And yes, that is what it means. But also, not participating in public life. It says you did the marks of the beast, you can't buy or sell. Revelation 13:17. People without food will be under major pressure to take the mark of the beast for basic necessities and health care and such. Within the first year of coming to power, the wicked ruler initiates the mark of the beast. At first, the mark is for convenience and voluntary. Later, it becomes mandatory. Some see that the mark has something in it that modifies brain activity, inducing compliance and decreasing religiosity. Those who take the mark, aligning themselves with the wicked government, will go to hell, says Revelation 14. Next, those who don't take the mark of the beast have to run away. Okay, here's an interesting account from an LDS woman in Utah. She sees the relocation camps are offered as shelters right from the start, but not many went to them at first. Don't ever go to those, as they become death camps. I watched people get the mark of the beast in these locations. It was just like the old smallpox vaccine, where the people lined up and used a little white gun. They caused people to line up and put the chip in the right hand of the people who entered their personal information into a computer, and then they just scan it like a supermarket and get access to all the person's information. In the back corner, I saw a small group of dissenters who had on blue jumpsuits. The others were kind of orange color. I watched them strap the dissenters on a gurney and put the mark in their forehead as a sign to everyone of their rebellion. Another visionary named Brandon Biggs also sees something similar, the mark in the hand or the mark in the forehead for resistors to keep an eye on them. And remember, if you still resist, you're beheaded, says Revelation 24. And guess what? Who's the kind of people who likes to do beheadings the most? Think about that. And also, this Brandon Biggs guy, he's the one who saw the Trump shooting in the ear before it happened. And he had this video where he said, he related it, didn't happen till later. And so that's pretty impressive. Okay, the saints who don't leave, they go to places of refuge. They have to deal with the beast government. The LDS woman in Utah Vision sees this. Suzanne Freeman sees it. Brandon Biggs sees it. Okay, the mark of the beast, though initially voluntary and for convenience, requires allegiance to the wicked New World Order and increasingly involves force and stance against Christian principles. In other words, if there's a system that is officially anti-Christian or pro-evil in one way or another, don't go along with that. So at some point, a worldwide religion goes around doing nice things to get followers, but it's aligned with and cooperates with the New World Order and and persecutes those who believe in traditional values. So don't be tricked by that, right? Okay. Heber C. Kimball. Okay, this is a quote from Heber C. Kimball. Quote, "The time is coming when we will be mixed up in these now peaceful valleys to the extent that it will be difficult to tell the face of a saint from the face of an enemy against the people of God. This is the time to look out for the great sieve, for there will be a great sifting time, and many will fall. For I say unto you, there is a test is coming. The church has before it many close places through which it will have to pass before the work of God is crowned with glory. The difficulties will be of such a character that man or woman who does not possess a full personal knowledge of the witness will fall." J. Golden Kimball relates this in 1930 from his father, Heber C. Kimball. In a few slides, I'll tell you guys more on those are very valid prophecies. Okay? There will be various opinions about whether the mark of the beast is actually that serious and whether it represents good or evil. The LDS woman in Utah, the vision she has sees the following. A Latter-day Saint church president dies. The church members and leaders are divided down the middle about whether to take the mark. Members who reject it retain the Spirit of the Lord and priesthood power. Members who take it persecute those who don't. This may be part of the meaning of the church being driven into the wilderness. This persecution and division. Driven into the wilderness, like you got to shut your mouth because it's no longer, politically correct. Yeah. Initially, the mark is for convenience and is voluntary. They may not understand the impact. It's COVID-like circumstances all over again, misinformation everywhere, and then persecuting each other. Note, this is controversial and a sad possibility, but a real possibility nonetheless, as indicated by the parable of the 10 virgins. And there's probably more to the story than this. It is prophesied by Heber C. Kimball that there will be such sore trials that will try us to the core, a major test, calling us on the spot to make a decision where there's not united agreement in the church or in society. Could be a litmus test to see how well we can discern things on our own. Okay. Last page on the New World Order persecution and apostasy. There will be a hotline to deliver up your friends and neighbors and family who have unacceptable views in firearms and food storage. There will be a financial reward for turning them in. They will use social media to see who you're linked to, similar to what the Soviet Union did, arresting people because of who their friends are, seen by anonymous person known to the authors. Okay, about one half the Latter-day Saints leave the church due to persecution. It'll be easier to leave the church than to endure the persecution. So are you squared up? Are you ready for that? Are you ready for that? Compare with the parable of the 10 virgins, okay? Scary parable. Elder Holland says that's a terrifying statistic, right? The FEMA camps and the martial law. When the FEMA trucks come, if you haven't left yet, it's a good time to leave. Don't join the FEMA camps. They turn into death camps. Think of the World War II Holocaust. John Taylor's second vision talks a lot about this. I have good reason to believe that is a proper vision as well. Joseph Smith says the saints are persecuted until Anamon Diamond. The horn, as in spoken of in the book of Revelation, makes war with the saints and overcomes them until the Ancient of Days comes. Then Adam gives judgment to the saints and they possess the kingdom. They become ministers here and in eternity. So pretty much it's going to be rough going until Anamon Diamond. Okay? So get through till that. The saints are called to places of refuge. Let's talk about this. Okay? Remember that call from the church. This is a special thing, special opportunity. Brigham Young says, Latter-day Saints in the mountains dress as Babylon. Only living in tents could save them. It is better to live with Indians in wigwams than to dwell in Babylon and miss the spiritual blessings. Joseph Smith says, when wars come, we'll have to flee to Zion. Those who don't go when they have a chance to will be afflicted by the devil. Wilford Woodruff says, many women will go with bundles on foot to the mountains. The call to places of refuge is different than the flight to the Rocky Mountain corridor, which took place earlier during the Civil War. Think plagues, war, everybody's coming to the west for safety. But then there's something else. Places of refuge specifically for the saints. Eventually, a call comes from the church to these places of refuge. It's not just everyone in the country coming to the west where, they're not fighting over there. I'm going there. No, this is something, a next phase, a little more advanced, where there's places of refuge. Okay? This is when the persecution gets really bad. Okay? Remember this beast kingdom's going on, and this wicked ruler for 3.5 years, who drives the saints to the wilderness. This call is one very few, like 10%, heed. Isaiah talks about a tithe, right? Those who take the mark of the beast don't go to the places of refuge, and many who don't take the mark, when called by church leaders, don't believe they're going to be taken care of without the government, so they don't go. Less than 10% of the church members heed the call to go to the places of refuge. Okay, Parable of Virgins says 50% are faithful, but even less than that will have faith to leave their home, particularly if it doesn't seem necessary all the time. I've had a reflection that the mark of the beast, you go to hell and all this. I don't know how God's going to judge all that, and especially if it's hard to discern. I imagine it'll be easy to discern the right path from the wrong path, but a lot of people do take the dang thing. But as far as eternal hell, I don't know. But they're at least going to live through hell if they're in this cooperating with the beast government instead of cooperating with the saints. They're going to live through hell. If you cooperate with the call to places of refuge, you are able to organize and bring supplies. If you try to wait, you'll have to flee to save your life, and you'll be coming with only clothes on your back if you make it at all. This same when we were fleeing Kirtland. There were several waves of running away, and if you left in the early phases, you could do it in a little bit of an organized fashion. Then eventually it was, okay, we just need to leave right now so we don't die. Joel Skousen talks about this, how he thinks going to New Jerusalem, it's not going to be like invitation to a tea party. It's going to be like, we need to get out of here. We need to leave right now because we need to not die. And so persecution ramping up. Okay. So we'll see what happens. And I hope and trust that we will have instructions and have opportunities. And as long as we're willing to let go of our fancy stuff, then we should be all right. Okay, let's see if we're all live still here. Good. Okay, continue on with the saints being called to places of refuge. Earthquakes hit hard during the 3 months of destruction prior to the call of places of refuge. However, in Utah, the earthquake's about 7 months after the call. So if you want to avoid the big one, go and run away. The saints go to places of refuge as directed by the church. Hundreds of visions attest to this. Okay? Places of refuge directed by the church. Hundreds of visions attest to this. The Cardston Prophecy in 1923 says the church maps out places for many church members to camp, and a call will be sent through the church to go there along with vast quantities of necessities supplied by members. Once they quietly leave, the last days' tribulation begin. Some saints are led by angels, some left months before to prepare, and there are non-member visions that attest to this. The saints are in the mountains, they live in tents. Okay? Tons of people talk about the saints going to live in tents. Look at Crowther chapter 4. Look at the Dream of Plagues, which was published in the Contributor in 1884. Look at all 3 volumes of Dreams and Visions series by Roger Young. This is a very consistent theme. Going to the mountains in tents. The saints will be driven out. This initiates the physical phase of the separation of the righteous from the wicked, foretold in the parable of the wheat and the tares. The wheat is safe gathered together in the barn, and the tares are spread out in the field to be burned at Christ's coming. Okay, and remember, President Nelson said the separation happens soon. Within weeks after the call to places of refuge, all major cities fall except Salt Lake City, according to anonymous David. Next, gathered saints in particular experience miracles. Food will be multiplied. Shields of invisibility will be placed over camps, because guess what? There's going to be people looking for you, but they're not going to find you. Miracles will abound, and the fullness of the priesthood will be in effect. Suzanne Freeman and the Bountiful Temple Dreamer see these things. Okay, going on. The places of refuge are only near the Mormon Corridor, Rocky Mountain Corridor, starting from Canada down to the northern tip of Arizona. There will be nothing left for the rest of the country. Few will survive if they don't go to the places of refuge. There are temporary stations for saints to go along their way back on the journey. There's little stations where, okay, we're going to help you. There will be mass exodus of people who didn't die in the Civil War. And remember, much of California sinks in the big Utah earthquake. This is like a plate level big deal. And later in a worldwide earthquake, America is split in half at the Mississippi River. Right there, split in half, Mississippi River, making the East Coast its own continent. There is a next point, there is a gathering first due to the Civil War, then a call to places of refuge when we are about to be invaded. The saints aren't told why they're called to the places of refuge. Okay, so it's on faith. Look at anonymous David, and terrify people perhaps. After the saints flee, about a month later, is the foreign invasion and the Ebola outbreak. Then the Utah earthquake about 7 months later. See anonymous David and Visions of Glory talk about this. Okay, Final page on the saints called to places of refuge. A couple quotes here from recent conferences. Henry Eyring says, "Fear shall come up," these are full quotes, quote, "Fear shall come upon all people, but you and I know that the Lord has prepared places of safety to which he is eager to guide us. It will be our choice whether or not to move up or to stay where we are, but the Lord will invite and guide us toward the direction by the Holy Ghost." Close quote. Upward by the, okay, close enough. 2005 is when he said that. Okay, and H. Aldridge in 2005 says, "Just as in the days of Noah, a way is already prepared for the escape of the Lord's elect, Latter-day Saints, if they are in tune with his prophets." Close quote. And Harold B. Lee in 48 said, "Thus clearly the Lord has placed the responsibility for directing the work of gathering in the hands of the leaders of the church, to whom he will reveal his will and where such things will take place in the future. It will be well before the frightening events concerning the fulfillment of God's promises and predictions are upon us, that the saints in every line prepare themselves to look forward to the instruction that will come to them from the first presidency of the church as to where they shall be gathered, and not be disturbed in their feelings until such instruction is given them as revealed by the Lord by proper authority." Close quote. Next, we're going to talk about the big hitters, Ebola, invasion, and the Utah earthquake. Multiple visions give us the following sequence. After the saints flee, then is the foreign invasion and the Ebola outbreak. Then is the Utah earthquake. See Visions of Glory, Anonymous David, Suzanne Freeman, and David Warwick. Therefore, the saints have already fled by the time of the big Utah earthquake. The oppression of the wicked ruler New World Order, Mark of the Beast, continue through this time and probably intensifies until the wicked ruler dies and Adam initiates the redemption of America. Joseph Smith says destructions prepare the way for the 10 tribes to return from the north. And by the way, Joseph Smith scholar Hiram Andrus, BYU professor, said Joseph Smith was so clear on the 10 tribes being together, there should be no dispute on that point. Now, I think they could easily make a case that some of them are scattered and some of them are together. So why are we so insistent that every single last one of them is scattered when clearly the prophets have said otherwise? So let's at least allow for that possibility. Let's not persecute those who have that opinion. DNC 88 says major destruction time happens after the time of the Gentiles. Orson Pratt says thousands will be left unburied in the U.S. from so swift destruction. Brigham Young and Wilford Woodruff say New York will be destroyed by earthquake, Boston by sea, Albany by fire. They're referring, of course, to DNC 84, 114 through 15, which says that. Orson Pratt says New York and others places like it will have no inhabitants. Can you imagine New York with no inhabitants? Wilford Woodruff says New York will be a mass of ruins. People will be in awe. Houses will be remained left desolate. We'll reminisce about the days before New York, Boston, and Albany were destroyed. Brigham Young said, "This saying of Woodruff is prophecy and will be fulfilled." Remember the 9/11 bomb? That was like a prequel, right? That was like it's kind of like how COVID, there was no toilet paper on the shelf. That was a prequel. You thought that was bad? Well, it's going to get worse. Okay, I don't know how long the Lord is going to give us before it does, but that was the taste. That was the, oh, if you were asleep, if you're easily awakened, that was to wake you up. And if you were dead asleep, and then that wouldn't wake you up even. But for those of us who are half asleep, that's the wake up call. Okay, same with the 9/11. It was a wake up call. Okay, it's going to be worse. So let's talk about Ebola, the third and biggest plague. Ebola is a bioweapon launched against the U.S. by the Chinese. The Chinese are inoculated against it. They invade America. See Anonymous David and Visions of Glory. There's internal, you get this, you get internal bleeding, 100% death rate if you come in contact with it. It decimates the east so bad there's none left to bury the dead. John Taylor talks about this. It appears that the eastern coast will be set on fire to purify of Ebola. When Ebola plague happens, invasion comes soon. China from the west, Russia from the east. See John Taylor and the Visions of Glory talking about this. Even in Salt Lake City, all homes have a badge of mourning on the door. Saints who go to places of refuge avoid this plague. See John Taylor. Saints are in their tents, preserved from the Ebola plague. Okay, see the Dream of Plagues. It talks about this. The Dream of Plagues, this was published by the church, sees that the plague is during a midsummer feast, and people can't see it and they die. Now, I'm not saying this is July 4, but there was historically a midsummer feast as well. Don't know exactly, but it just says during a midsummer feast, people, and they can't see it and they die. The poison falls from the skies. Maybe it's chemtrails. This could affect millions during the same week, right? Going on back to the Dream of Plagues, saints are in their tents to keep from breathing it. Some saints in tents who do get it in places of refuge will be raised from the dead. Similar details come from anonymous dreamer David, who sees all three plagues. John Taylor sees the Ebola plague and says it hits 6 cities, first in Salt Lake City, but he doesn't know how it hit. Sarah Mennett in the book There's No Death sees the same 6 cities that Taylor sees. She said it was evil men with jars in their hand. They would drop the jars that would infect the city. Clearly a symbolic teaching. From the plagues, millions of Americans die. 350 million in America will be cleansed down to about a tenth of that. Isaiah speaks of this. Okay, Isaiah chapter 6, chapter 1, chapter 10, chapter 24. And Isaiah, Cleon Skousen talks about it and analyzing this. Also, anonymous David confirms this. So that's not great news, but it's the way it is. Next, we're going to talk about invasion of America by foreign powers. The U.S. is nuked and invaded. The big Utah earthquake is separate from the 3 months of destruction after the Civil War. You got all that, and then this is later. The big Utah earthquake is about a year after. George Albert Smith, now remember, you might say, oh, what's all these specific dates? This guy's crazy. And all these visionaries are crazy. They think they can call it like this. Well, look, we're just taking the themes. We're doing the best we can. We're looking what they said. And you know what? Maybe it'll be different. I said in the beginning of this presentation that these are guidelines, okay? But God's given these dreams for a reason, and so let's do what we can. If nothing else, let's get inspired to be courageous, not afraid, and prepare in every way, and so forth. Okay? George Albert Smith, as in President George Albert Smith, sees the nuke happen on a holiday before a new president can be inaugurated, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year's. The nuke is before the foreign invasion of America. Sarah Mennett and Ione Wolfgram talk about this too. Let me make one more caveat here and say, if this, you see we're dropping names like George Albert Smith, John Taylor, Heber C. Kimball, Brigham Young, obviously, Joseph Smith, all these guys, big names in the church. We've been talking about this stuff for a long time. It's only if you're totally ignorant of all this stuff. It's okay if you are, because we don't talk about this anymore. But we've been seeing it for a long time. So if this is all sounds super crazy, well, maybe it's because you're not very well versed in the stuff that's already been said in the scriptures and by the modern prophets. And so really a lot of what's coming out in these visions is not like total craziness. It's just, sometimes it's a little more detail, but it's the same themes that we're seeing in all the other stuff. So ultimately, throw all the visions away. Who cares? Focus on the scriptures, focus on the teachings of the prophets. It's all the same stuff, basically. So that's why this is a pleasure. And like it says about the Apocrypha, the DNC says, look, the Apocrypha's got some inspired stuff in it. If you've got the Holy Spirit, you can go in there and you can find what's inspired. And you get a lot of these people that say, oh, well, this prophecy can't be right, and this prophecy can't be right. But does it match with the theme? For example, when who's that guy? Hoffman did a bunch of forgeries. They're like, oh, this guy's great. That must be how it is. But Bruce McConkie's like, no. That's not Joseph Smith. That's not the voice of Joseph Smith. So we're going to apply the same principle. McConkie was able to discern this Hoffman guy was a crook. Then we're going to apply the same principle when we're studying visions. Look and see if it matches the theme, if it matches the general prophetic picture. Okay, moving on. George Albert Smith. Okay, on the holiday. Okay. George Albert Smith also sees an EMP, electromagnetic pulse to disable electricity, goes off and results in pre-1800s conditions. Sounds like a party. Anonymous David sees that before the invasion on the east and west coast, they nuke California and D.C. to stop the violence. This inadvertently helps stop the mobsters from accessing places of refuge. The mobs are more violent than the foreign invaders. Among the invaders, the Russians are more violent than the Chinese. There's an EMP, but the electricity's already been out for a while anyway. You ready for that? You ready for no electricity? Invaders come when America is crippled from an earthquake, etc., with intent to help, but invade America fully once they are in. Hey, we're here to help. And then, and by the way, we want to rule the place now. 3 months of destruction occurs after the Civil War and before the invasion. The foreign troops come in after the Civil War. Visions of Glory talks about that. China invades the West. Russia invades the East. Joseph Smith, White Horse Prophecy talks about that, and David Wilkerson talks about that. And by the way, that White Horse, we have some good reason to believe that. China invades Utah, but they are held back at the Virgin River Canyon by the priesthood. Visions of Glory talks about that. The 10 tribes bring their records to Salt Lake City before the Utah earthquake. Anonymous David talks about that. The records of the church are moved across the Colorado River. The body of saints make a U-shaped trek out of Utah. John Taylor's second vision, called the Horseshoe Vision, sees that. Let's talk about the large Utah earthquake now. There's other quakes in other places, but there's a doozy coming for Utah. The large Utah earthquake kills many and is along the Wasatch Front through Salt Lake and Utah counties, etc. It's the biggest quake America has ever seen. It sinks part of California. Anonymous David and Visions of Glory both see this. The Utah earthquake is about 7 months after the call to places of refuge in the fall of some year. The invasion has happened earlier, but the Chinese don't get to Utah until the earthquake. They tried to come to help. We do our best to fight them off. The LDS Women in Utah vision says, Some families went to Sanpete while others went to Carbon County. The gas stations had long lines where they had power. I saw a long line of military vehicles along with other cars and trucks headed up Spanish Fork Canyon. Martial law was declared off and on during this, and FEMA was a big influence at this time to relocate people and take control of the situation. After this first quake, I saw a lot of people in the Wasatch Front evacuate southward to the valley by Manti. Note this valley by Manti, center of the land of Utah. In the Book of Mormon, they have to gather to the center of their land. Some people gathering to the center of the land, just like in the Book of Mormon. Maybe it's a type and shadow of what we got to do. Thanks to Morgan Philpott for pointing out that interesting tidbit. Back to the LDS Women in Utah vision. It was completely full, mostly of green army tents with an odd color mixed in here and there. The area was full of people, with some people finding shelter in the turkey barns they have there. The government provided lots of supplies at that time. The people were able to have what they needed. It was a safe place. Many waters come up. Next point. Many waters come up as a result of the big Utah earthquake. See Suzanne Freeman in Visions of Glory, and Hydroplanet Model UM for that matter. Along these Wasatch Front will be hit hard by the big Utah earthquake. Okay, Wasatch Front. It's going to be bad news there. To avoid this catastrophe, they must be prepared to leave when called to places of refuge before the quake occurs. The millions who have to be removed from the Wasatch Front after the big Utah earthquake will go to Cache Valley or Sanpete County. It's not like the earthquake's going to kill everyone, but it's going to destroy a lot of things, and you're going to have to evacuate. Better to leave before than after. Later, a worldwide earthquake occurs which splits America in half at the Mississippi River, and the East Coast becomes a separate continent. The East won't have many inhabitants to bury its dead, and it will be burned to get rid of the Ebola. That's how you get rid of Ebola. To see John Taylor, Pastor Warren, and Anonymous David. They'll see that. Split America right in half. A year after the big earthquake, missionaries are sent back out. Visions of Glory sees that. Okay, now I'm going to do a few points on Heber C. Kimball, how the saints will be tried in Zion cleansed before Missouri becomes center of the New Jerusalem. There's some disputation about this. Some think Missouri's already ready to go, and we all should go there right now. Well, if you want to go there, and the Spirit tells you to go there, then you better go there. But let me talk about some prophecies. And, we're just going to go here and there, and we're probably going to want to, if we ever get official instruction, then let's do what the official instruction is. But right now, let's look at Heber C. Kimball. As reported to Amanda Wilcox, Salt Lake City, 1868. And I know some people question the Wilcox, but also J. Golden Kimball repeats it. And it's been published in the Deseret News. And Dwayne Crowther quotes it like 6 times. And a lot of others who have done high-quality work and research on this. Okay? So he says, the western boundaries of the state of Missouri will be swept so clean of its inhabitants that, as President Young tells us, when we return to that place, there will be not left so much as a yellow dog to wag his tail. J. Golden Kimball repeats this and adds the part about how before that day comes, the saints will be put to the test, and they'll try the very best of them. The pressure will become so great that the righteous among us will cry unto the Lord day and night until deliverance comes. Close quote. So does it look like we're there, folks? Does it look like the saints have been tested to the max and that Missouri has been cleansed of all its wickedness? Okay, notice that the saints are tested before Missouri is cleansed for their return. Notice that the prophecy was given 1868. This is after the Civil War, meaning this was not just fulfilled in the Civil War. Sure, some prophecies of Joseph Smith were fulfilled in the Civil War, right? Joseph clearly saw that. But there's more people that have talked about this, and there's more to it than just that. So, okay, let's go on. Yeah, we're ready. Okay, Isaiah reminds us the saints will be tried before Zion will be redeemed. Okay, he says in chapter 1, he'll purely purge away thy dross. He'll restore thy judges as at first. The city will be a city of righteousness. Zion will be redeemed with judgment. That's a big one. What is Zion? Well, Zion will be redeemed with judgment. In other words, judgment. Bad things. We've got to go through bad things. Okay? Redeemed with judgment. It's not been redeemed with judgment yet, I don't think. Okay, Isaiah chapter 4 says, he that is left in Zion, he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy. In other words, is everyone that here right now holy and all that? Not so much. Okay, and then it'll be ransomed. Okay, the ransom of the Lord will return with songs of everlasting joy. Okay. In Zion, chapter 52, the henceforth no more come unto thee uncircumcised and unclean. Is that the case right now? Is there no uncircumcised and unclean? As in, are we all doing what God wants? Not so much. Okay, and then Isaiah tells us something that's kind of a bummer, that only a tithe will remain. Okay, he says, chapter 6, but yet, okay, he says, the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without man, utterly desolate, a great forsaking in the midst of the land, but yet in it shall be a tenth. Okay, and it shall return, blah, blah, blah. Isaiah chapter 1, left unto us a very small remnant. Okay, Isaiah chapter 10, a remnant of them return. Consumption decreed shall overflow with righteousness. Are we overflowing with righteousness? Isaiah 24, the Lord makes the earth empty and waste and upside down. Now, this one might be the actual second coming. He says, curse devoured the earth, inhabitants of the earth were burned, and few men left. But I want to say that some of these prophecies are not just for the time of the second coming where the world is burned, because lots of other prophecies put in context this to see that before the cleansing of Zion, America has to be cleansed. Cleon Skousen wrote a whole book on this called The Cleansing of America. And America has to be cleansed before it can be redeemed. Okay? But then once it is, then we've got our Adam on Diamond and the new Jerusalem happening in America, and it's really amazing. And then all the other stuff that's quite nasty is over there. America doesn't have to deal with it so much. We take out this New World Order beast leader, and we have some good times. Okay? The saints are, Thessalonians says, the wrath is not for the saints. The worst that's going to come is not for the saints. But we do have our share of trials to get through. And it's going to be a lot better for us if we're on the right side and we're trying to be good. Real good. Okay? Next page. Okay, let's talk about this. General Donovan thought the Civil War was fulfilled to Joseph Smith's prophecy in the cleansing of Missouri, and B.H. Roberts promoted the same perspective. Surely on some level it did. Joseph said to Donovan, God's wrath hangs over Jackson County, and you will live, okay, indicating that one was going to be him. You will live to see the day when it will be visited by fire and sword. The fields and the farms and the houses will be destroyed, and only the chimneys will be left to mark the desolation. So yeah, Civil War for sure. But there's other people that talked about this too, and there's other people that said there's going to be more stuff that's not just the Civil War stuff. More beyond this, okay? There's going to be another Civil War. There's going to be more cleansing. There's going to be all this. Okay, more cleansing will come to Missouri and everywhere else in America, except, God willing, a few little pockets of refuge in the Rockies where He's directed His church, and as predicted by several prophets. Zion and Missouri cannot be redeemed until the saints have sufficiently tried and refined. Ask yourself, are we there? President Young spoke of a time when the Lord will, quote, purge the land, cut off the evildoer, and prepare a way for us to the return of my people to their inheritance, and added that if our enemies do not cease their oppression upon this people, as sure as the Lord lives, it will not be many days before they will occupy that land of Zion and build up a temple of the Lord. Well, close quote. Well, we aren't there yet, so hopefully soon. The Jews say next year in Jerusalem. Well, we say next year in New Jerusalem. Okay, Brigham Young talked about the safety in the mountains in the west. He said, quote, an island empire will be established in these valleys of the mountains, which will be a place of refuge for millions of people to gather to. When the great day of judgments of God come upon the earth, and the righteous come here for safety, our people will go west, east, west, north, and south, but the day will come when they'll be glad to come back. We will be shut out from the rest of the world. Close quote. And other prophets have repeated this. J. Golden Kimball and others say, hey, we're spread out right now, and that's fine and dandy, but you're going to be glad to come back at some point to the west. Remember, not everyone needs to go to Missouri. Remember, we already quoted Brigham. He said, we're not all going to Missouri. That's fine. But I just want to make a clarification here that there's going to be refuge in the West. Okay. Now, I will say, if you think you're out of Dodge in Missouri or Utah or anywhere else, think again. All of these places have extremely hard times coming their way. Only those places the Lord has specifically prepared, to which He will call His people at times of the judgments, will be spared. Follow the Spirit and the prophet, and God bless you. We do have a word of comfort, however, from Heber C. Kimball. He says, quote, the trials in the last days will be numerous, but to the faithful they will be but a small moment, for they will live above these things. They will increase in power. Close quote. That's about it. That's about it, folks. I'm not going to go into this next part because I don't have time. And it's about the redemption of America, Adam on Diamond, New Jerusalem, a new holy government, global judgment, and the second coming. So a lot of that, that's the visionaries, the stuff that they've been seeing is mostly this preparation to get up to this. Remember, once we get to the redemption of America, the Adam on Diamond, this is where things go a little better. So there's been a lot of teachings. Okay, I'll put out this presentation on the site if you want to go into this. I'm not going to do it in this video. which thank God has survived to this point. Adam on Diamond. Okay, there's quotes and quotes and quotes. I don't have time for this. Adam on Diamond. Okay, New Jerusalem. I've got. You can see this is only part of it, by the way. I've got more selections from Crowther in the book, and the book has like 100 times more than this. So check that out. New Jerusalem, a new holy government, judgment around the world. Okay, you know what? Maybe you guys want to. I just got this idea. Maybe you guys want to pause the video and look at these for yourself. So I'm just gonna go a little slower. Here we go. Adamanda Amen, page 1 of 2. Page 2. Okay, next is New Jerusalem. I have 5 pages on that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then New Holy Government is 2 pages. 1, 2. And then Judgment Around the World, Vials, Trumpets, Armageddon. That's 3 pages. 1, 2, 3. And the Second Coming. That page right there. Okay. In the book, I've also got these themes arranged by person. So here's everything from Patriarch Charles Evans. We actually didn't talk about him a lot today. And President John Taylor, Heber C. Kimball, George Albert Smith, Visions of Plagues from the Contributor Magazine, Cardston Temple Prophecy, Summary of Alma Erickson, Sarah Mennett, Suzanne Freeman, Visions of Glory, Anonymous Dreamer David. He sees several phases. Phase 1, about a year. Phase 2, about a year. Destruction from within. Phase 3, about a year. External destruction. So again, this is the book if you want to take a look. The textbook, really. It's massive. And go to richardsonstudies.com, and it's on Amazon as well for the paperback. And God bless you.